Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, guys, welcome to the Mike White Podcast. Today I am joined by retired Air Force Colonel Gary Tonka Rose. He was an F-15C fighter pilot and weapons school graduate, along with my dad here. He's flew with Tonka in Okinawa, Japan, and they're close friends. So thank you all for joining me today.
Hey, aloha from Hawaii, MJ, Bull. It's great to rejoin with both you guys. Bull, great to reconnect with you as well, my friend.
Same.
All right, so we'll start it off. We're going to go off just for early days of wanting to be a fighter pilot. I mean, it's one of those careers you think of with astronauts, fighter pilots, just really badass, really cool. When did you get that bug, Tonka, growing up that you knew you wanted to fly jets?
Yeah, I was bitten at an early age, MJ. Dude, I'll tell you, just for my growing up, I had a really exceptional experience just being bounded by closeness and family, and I think church. I was born in Washington, D.C. I'll just give you a quick 30-second synopsis. Born in Washington, D.C., but my family moved pretty quickly to a little farm in Virginia. My grandparents on my mom's side bought about 40 acres outside of Charlottesville, a little town called Gordonsville. And it's important to your question to say that my life grew up on this little tiny gentleman's farm that my grandmother and grandfather had. We had a piece of that property. My parents and my aunt and uncle lived there as well. And every Sunday we were at my grandmother's house. That was how we grew up. It was church in the morning and at my grandmother's house for lunch. She cooked lunch every day for 1,000 years on Sunday. Wow. Yeah. So part of this was she was an extraordinary woman in that she wanted to impart on her family the importance of where we were growing up, of being an American, and all the things that are just so great with being born and raised there in Virginia. And when I was about 8 years old, one of the things that we did was we went to Charlottesville, Virginia, to the airport to an air show. It's like 20 minutes from my house. And somehow or another, the Charlottesville Air Show authorities had gotten the Blue Angels to perform there. I was 8 years old. Yeah, we were there with my whole family. This is standard. This was back in the days before seat belts. It was leaded gasoline that cost like a nickel a gallon probably. And everybody piles in like two big monstrosity Plymouth Fury cars, and all 20 of us go to this air show. And man, they had me at hello. I just remember standing there watching with amazement the Blue Angels as they performed. My sister, who I love dearly, my older sister, was terrified. She was crying every time they went over, because it's so low and loud. This is back in the days of the A4 for the Blue Angels. And I was just mesmerized and amazed by them. And it was at that moment where it had me. I had the bug. I wanted to fly a fighter jet when I looked at that, and I never flinched.
Well, that recruiting paid off for sure. And but then, so you have the idea there, but do you know what you need to do in order to get to that level as a kid growing up?
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely did not have the tools in my toolkit. So it goes to really one of the things that I would impart upon people is I heard this saying in church one time. I heard this in the church at Okinawa, the preacher say, "You cannot impart what you do not possess." And I was part of that because I came from a very loving background, but it was small town Virginia, and we didn't have access to many things. And I can see this today with, things that have changed somewhat, but I think some people are still hamstrung with that. You have a very small sphere of influence where you have all of this. I truly believe that you have so much within your grasp, but you have to have a mechanism to one, be aware of what's available, and two, how to actually in execution get to that. So I did not have those things, but I was fortunate that I met a gentleman in my church, a retired Army colonel who, no kidding, at the age of 18, maybe even 17, jumped into St. Mary Glees with the airborne unit on D-Day. So kind of an icon, a guy named Warren Crowfoot. No kidding. He was part Indian. Had been very much a Renaissance guy. He was a teacher of philosophy and literature at West Point. Went on to retire as an Army colonel, and here he is in his retired life, living out his glory days in small town Virginia. Has a little farm there that he lives on, and doing things, pursuing his passions. And he happens to meet me, or I happen to meet him through the church, and he sees where I'm at because I know Bull's a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm like, hey, man, if you want to fly fighter jets for the Air Force, you need to go to the Air Force Academy. But I never was able to get an appointment. I didn't know what I didn't know. And then Warren steps in and is like, he lays out the battle plan. He's like, all right, man, let me see your SAT scores. And he looks at them and nearly has a coronary. And we survived that. And he's like, all right, dude, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get on this program where literally once a week I met him at his house for vocabulary, for math. And it just began a point at about my sophomore year in high school where he showed me a path on how to get to what I wanted. And we proceeded down that path together. So it was really through his help, the love and support of my parents, my family, just always encouraging me to reach for the stars, that I ended up, I never got an appointment to VMI. So the way for my senior year in high school, I went to a community college for a year while I still applied for the Air Force Academy. It ended up being that I had two options. I had the option, actually it ended up being three. I think I got accepted to Virginia Tech, I got accepted to VMI, and I got an appointment to the Merchant Marine Academy. So out of those three options, I chose VMI and never looked back.
Well, that's had to been tough when going right out of high school, you don't get that appointment to college. And what did you ever have a thought of maybe this isn't for me? Maybe I should go to another career?
Yeah, I had a backup plan, and I think that's one of the lessons in life, man. You always got to have a plan B, but never, ever, ever give up on plan A. And I fought relentlessly for that. I never will forget, my mom still brings this up, where I got my initial letter. So I'm working, I work at Safeway there in town in Charlottesville. I'm going to school. I'm working full-time, going to school full-time, still studying, and playing some sports. So it's just having a great time. And you look back on that life, man, where it's like, man, how did you do all that stuff? Because they're all full-time jobs, and I know your dad and you are both a lot like that. But I never will forget, I got a tentative acceptance letter from VMI, and I'd really decided. My dad and Warren and I went on a visit to VMI. Thank God it was after the rat line, so everybody, it was a normal school, a beautiful spring in Virginia and the mountains, the school, just everybody's looking high and tight. Everybody's got smiles on their faces and having a good time. And so I decided on VMI, and I got a tentative, which wasn't an acceptance letter. So this bloke from Louisa County, Gordonsville, Virginia, calls the dean of admissions at VMI and says, "Hey, man, I meet all your requirements. What's going on here? Why do I not have an acceptance letter as opposed to a tentative appointment?" And it must have struck a chord, because somehow or another, the next thing that shows up in the mail is an acceptance letter to VMI. So
awesome.
I think it's just one of those things that goes back to, persistence and tenacity. If you have a dream, never, ever, ever give up on it, or never let anybody tell you no.
Just keep going after it. And another thing I think a lot of people can learn from your situation is the value of having a mentor. Oh. And in that day and age, it was hard to find someone. Like, it's very fortunate that you had the Army, forgot his name,
Army
but
Colonel,
what was
Colonel Warren Crowfoot.
Colonel Crowfoot. And but nowadays with social media and Twitter, LinkedIn, there's so many, like you guys, so many young people can reach out. And if you just keep reaching out, I'm sure there's a good chance that one of y'all will respond and more than willing to give advice. So I think this day and age, it's a lot easier to have mentors.
Yeah, 100%.
So now we're at VMI. So you're
Mhm.
leaving home, going to
Yeah.
a military school. What are your good memories of VMI?
Yeah. Well, there's a saying about VMI. It's a great place to be from, a terrible place to be at. Oh man, it's
Man.
so
Did
true.
it start right away?
So true. You embrace the suck, man, and it hits you like a 2x4 right in the face. Uh,
Well, I know you know like thousands of fighter pilots, or maybe that's an exaggeration, but probably
yeah.
not. And they know you, and you connect. You're probably talking to 10 a day. But how about VMI connections? How many VMI connections do you have? A lot, or just a few close ones, or
Yeah.
how's it work?
So I'll tell you, there is four F-15 pilots that I know that are VMI guys. So we flew with Stoner
Oh,
Reedy and Mr.
oh, he's
Pilar.
awesome.
Uh,
I didn't know
yeah,
that
yeah,
guy.
yeah. They're both VMI guys. So from Kadena. So yeah, I'm sorry, Bull. What was your question about that?
Well, just do you keep in touch with VMI graduates,
Yeah,
or other than? I mean, you
yeah,
keep in touch with fighter pilots, I
yeah,
know, but
yeah. So man, it was. I do. So that was my first experience really outside of sports with just a connection. And, I know you call it your plebe year and the plebe line.
dual year,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So rat line at VMI. And I just attended last year, my 30th reunion.
cool.
And dude, it was like we had never left each other. So that sadly
Right.
though, I don't keep in touch with as many people as I should from VMI. But I'll tell you, when I saw them, it was like we had never been apart. So
Right.
I'll just
Yeah.
mention my roommates there. Pete Dillon, who's also a retired colonel from the Marine Corps. Just some exceptional people there. Pete Dillon, Doug Thompson, Steve Kostoff, Ash Lowe, my dear friend Scotty Birch, and also Mike Martin. Just some phenomenal people that not a day goes by that I don't think about them. And Pete, my buddy Pete, my roommate, retired Marine, survivor of cancer. So as we were going through our 30th reunion, he was at home rehabbing from cancer treatment. So he's got
Jeez.
two buddy passes on the Hawaiian Airlines for whenever he feels good enough to come out to Hawaii. But just some great memories and people that we survived a lot of adversity together.
Well, part of the humbleness or humility that you have is MJ was doing the research on this, and it looks like you were near the top, if not the top of VMI, or did very well at VMI. What was the story there that I never heard of, and I knew you for 5, 10
Oh,
years?
that's too funny. Yeah, your wife is a great investigative reporter. Well, yeah, I know you know that, and MJ probably much to his chagrin knows that. Yeah.
So you're top of your class?
Well, I'll tell you, to this day, one of the best, most sincere honors of my life is I was peer voted to be a member of the honor court at VMI. So
Wow.
my senior
Wow.
year, I served as a prosecutor, one of two prosecutors, me and Wade Shelton, and then Patrick Krug was our president. Those are all peer voted in. So I did 2 years as an honor court representative. This my senior year. I was what they call one of the big three, the president and two prosecutors. So that was just a tremendous honor. So if there's any measure I think that I take pride in, and when you say, hey, you did pretty well, it would be being peer selected to be part of
You
the
sound
VMI
exactly
court.
like my dad. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
My dad did the same thing in the Army. He was peer selected in whatever they do in the Army, but
Mhm.
that was his proudest moment, is
Wow.
being selected by his buddies.
Yeah. Amazing.
And I think and you're talking about the close relationships, and that's one of the beautiful things about the military is the value of teamwork and camaraderie. And it's great to hear that it starts right away when you kind of have to have that when
Yeah.
what you're going through, like you said, embracing the suck together, and
It's
it
the
builds
suck,
special
man.
bonds. And the other cool thing you're talking about, your other roommates and classmates, they're Marines, they're different branches. So you don't know like you can go different branches from VMI. When did you know that you were going to pilot training in the Air Force?
Yeah. So, besides knowing I wanted to be a fighter pilot, somehow I didn't even know what it was, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly a C model Eagle. That's all I ever wanted to do. I think
It's
what
beautiful.
happened was I saw a model of it as a kid in a toy store and was like, man, that is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. And turns out to be not far from the truth, right? it's just a beautiful,
Right.
beautiful machine. So I'll just tell you a quick story on this thing, MJ. So, you arrive at VMI and you don't know what's about ready to hit you. And you walk down this corridor after you say it's in the basketball gymnasium. So you're still with your parents, they're dropping you off, and you're saying goodbye to your mom and dad for the first time significantly, which is an significant emotional event. And I remember I'm in line, you're choosing your major and also your ROTC. Like you said, you've got, at the time you had all four, but now you actually have the Coast Guard there, I think, as an option as well. At least there's an affiliation with the Coast Guard. So you do have a lot of options, which was exceptional. And I was torn because my dad had been in the Navy and he was maybe trying to persuade me into a Navy career. But I'm like, man, the Air Force has got the Eagle, plus you're in the O Club. You're not in a hot bunk with another dude. So for 6 months at a time. So I never will forget this. This memory is as vivid as the day it happened, that I'm standing in line for ROTC, Air Force on the left, Navy on the right, and I take a step off to the left. It could have very easily just as been to the right. And I never looked back. So, and from there, you're signed up, you kiss mom and dad goodbye, you walk down the tunnel, and so begins the rat line. There's somebody waiting for you there in the racquetball court, and you know what your position in life is right away. And it's for the next year.
Did you ever have thoughts of quitting?
No.
That first year?
That was never. We had 400 people and some change in my class when we started, class of 91, and 50 people left the first night.
Yeah.
Never was an option for me. Never even thought about it.
And to get pilot training as well seems pretty competitive.
Yeah, super.
So
super competitive.
When did you find out you were going to flight school?
Yeah, so it was my junior year, which we call second class year. We get our allocation. So I was able to pick up an Air Force scholarship after the first semester. And this is amazing. VMI, just super rigorous. I'm sure like Bull's experience at the Air Force Academy, the mental, the physical rigor, and the academic rigor. I had a 1.1 GPA after my first semester. Wow. Because you are just constantly getting your butt kicked from 4 a.m. till sometime late at night. You're just getting harassed, worked out, yelled at, and then there's classroom work in between. So it was a pretty tough program. So it involved, again, a lot of support from my parents. I'm going to summer school. I never will forget calc, the first college calculus class, like Calc 4 or whatever. Man, just kicked my butt. So I had to go to summer school to get a better grade, and ended up working well because it really clicked. And now I'm grooving, get the Air Force scholarship. And then this was in class graduated May of 91, but in the summer of 1990, there had been about 20 of us in my class that were in Air Force ROTC, of which 10 of us had pilot training slots. And that summer, the class before us, class of 1990, Bull, are you 90 or 91?
I'm 88 in the academy.
So you probably heard about this. You and I were kind of involved in some of the same challenges with Air Force Manning. The seniors, the class of 90, had gotten letters in the mail saying, hey, man, to a person, we don't need you at Air Force pilot training anymore. Here's your options. And heads up, wow. Class of 91, you got the same thing coming. So yep. We all recompeted. There was an internal competition from the Air Force ROTC, and out of the 10 of us that were going to pilot training originally, as we started our senior year, only 4 of us went as scheduled. So 60% cut.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
you chose mechanical engineering, yep. So that's a more difficult major than others. Is there a reason you chose that?
Yeah. I looking back, hindsight's 20/20, but looking back, I wouldn't have changed a thing. And it kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier with having a backup plan. My backup mm-hmm. plan had pilot training or Air Force not worked out, is I was going to be an architect. That's kind of awesome. Where I saw things going.
Mechanical engineering is the most versatile majors, I think, out there. If anyone doesn't know what they want to study, that that's probably the best choice for sure.
Yeah, it's good. I think well-rounded, with lots of options to go from there.
Yeah. So now you're making it to Reese Air Force Base, going through pilot training, and is that the first time you fly a plane?
Yeah. So my parents paid for me to get maybe 10 hours of flight in a Cessna in Orange County Airport in Virginia. This while I
Nice.
was at BMI. Then at BMI during one of the summers, I got to go. It was a great summer of my junior year. I got sent to light aircraft training and to U.S. Army Airborne School with two of my classmates, Brian Brooks and Brian Snyder. And we just had a great time. And, I never will forget getting yelled at. It's like, hey, you Air Force cadet, what are you doing here at Army Airborne School? And I was thinking to myself, dude, exactly, why am I jumping out of a perfectly good airplane?
Yeah.
But yeah, it all worked out. We had a great blast. But to your point there, MJ, yeah, I got sent to light aircraft training in Hondo, Texas. And the idea there is that they solo you in a Cessna 172. So by the time I showed up at pilot training, at Reese Air Force Base, I had maybe 15 hours total time in an airplane.
Mm-hmm. And so what techniques or strategies helped you succeed doing, it's a fast-paced environment and something completely new?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, let me go back to BMI just real quickly. I'll say one thing about that. Just, for me personally, I think any success I've had in life, I owe to my parents, I owe to God, and I owe to VMI. Because everything that I got from there enabled any success I had. Just a couple of key things that I took away from there: the discipline, the work ethic, perseverance, resilience, the importance of teamwork, with the rat line and your brother rats, developed within me and my classmates. And I think the ability to persevere, and you guys will understand this, being military vets yourself, the ability to persevere and overcome adversity is so hard. So I'm not going to say other things were easy. They definitely were not. But when I step back and take measure of it, how it was relative to VMI,
you're as disciplined as anybody I've ever seen. Well, and it's not that, it's not the, discipline people can take it different ways, but the discipline that you have is the good type of discipline that nobody is unequaled.
Yeah.
And that perseverance is so vital, because nothing ever goes to plan. Like you can plan as much as you want.
First contact with the enemy.
Yeah. And and sometimes you're gonna have to take some, punches in the face, and you got to figure out how to keep going.
Yeah, 100%. But just getting ready for pilot training, I'll add two more things about VMI. That really is where I had heard about this before, and I saw it in my parents, my grandparents, church members from Mechanicsville Baptist Church, was the concept of dedicating yourself to something bigger than yourself. And I know both of you completely understand that. And I'll tell you, it prepares you to think about the significant dichotomies in life. And one of the ones that I thought of, which I was thinking about our chat this morning, was I have a couple of favorite sayings. One is teamwork makes the dream work. And I'm sure you've heard of that, but there's also a corollary to that. And I saw this from one of my special ops friends, posted this on LinkedIn. This was from a killed in action Navy SEAL, U.S. Navy SEAL Major Zimbeck. He said, prepare as if no one will ever help you. And, those are two big dichotomies that as you go through your life, you really have to figure out how both of those are very important, but how you balance those is going to be equally important, I think. And, to your point, MJ, just about pilot training, those were all things that I took away from VMI and from my upbringing that I think helped prepare me to get through pilot training, which was, by the way, the first time I saw your impressive dad. Bull did not know me at pilot training, but Bull was a Czech pilot. I think you had just, so I was 9308 Bull, and I think you were probably in Czech flight by then.
It was, I don't know where I was. I think you saw me in academics. I was at Aero or Systems, somewhere over that side. Right.
Yeah.
And
You're going to see your dad, and you're never going to mistake your dad for anybody else, right? Very prominent figure. So,
well, both of you guys are very tall fighter pilots. Like, I don't know how they got you to fit in the plane.
yeah, we might have scooched you down a little bit when they were taking measurements.
Yeah. So you're saying that the quote, how you prepare like you have to do everything by yourself, but you're also working with a team, and I don't know if relying on others is the right word, but getting a lot of help from others. What types of things inside, like whether it be VMI or pilot trainers, squadrons, that you valued in a teammate?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It is a meritocracy, right? And your father and I have always valued the ability to perform your job. And that is from fighter pilot. And I think that quote from our Navy SEAL, I wrote it down here. It's prepare as if no one will ever help you. That is super important for a single seat fighter pilot, right? Because it's all on you. But as quickly as I say that, I can name 10 teams that without them, you're never even going to get in the air. We're going to be there in our single seat fighter, but we're going to have a four ship that we're a part of. And every single member of that's going to be equally as important. And to get off the ground, you've got an incredible team of maintainers that have worked harder than you've ever worked or I've ever worked to prepare that jet for you. And then to even get to there, you've gone through life support, where you've got an incredible AFE team that's got your gear that is to perfection, that you don't even have to think about, that enables you to get in the aircraft and do your job. And then the other folks that support throughout the squadron, from the schedulers to the One Charlie Oscars, man, it's just the whole thing is, and Intel, the whole thing is just a machine that runs to perfection based on the people and the credibility of each individual. I don't know, Bull, anything to add on that?
No, you got it all. And then the AWACS guys.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
It is a well-oiled machine, and that's not easy to do, though. Do you ascribe a certain trait, who keeps the people accountable with everyone working together?
Yeah. Well, I think leadership is super important in that. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about leadership as we go along here. But having a person at the front that makes sure everybody has what they need to get the mission done, and then make sure that the culture and environment is such that everybody has accountability of their own actions, right? And then individually as leaders within the squadron, that occurs at multiple levels, whether you're the senior NCO in AFE that is holding the youngest airman accountable for making sure the tech order is followed to the T for a piece of equipment that may mean the difference between somebody's life or death.
Yeah.
That accountability and authority is absolutely crucial to that thing, MJ.
I have a little scratch paper and taking notes here, and I only have one thing on it: leader. And Tonka, that's what you are to me, as far as just people have. Since I known you, I knew you when you were a captain. I don't know, at VMI obviously you were a leader too, but I don't know if you've been a leader all your life. But you are the type of person that people just want to follow and would run through a brick wall for. And so I don't know what caused that or how you got that, but you definitely are the epitome of a leader in my eyes.
Well, you're too kind, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I think I'll just say thank you.
And just as an outsider and meeting all these great leaders throughout my life, what I've admired about them is the lead by example type thing. Like, these people have the perseverance you're talking about, the discipline, the dedication, that they're not the ones to complain. They're like, what's the objective? Let's go get it. And if there's any roadblocks, we'll get around it. And they're the ones that are the hard chargers and just set the example. I don't know if you saw that in your career.
Yeah, I saw that. I think I saw that in my family, from my grandparents, my parents. Never a complaint. It's just like, hey, every day is a blessing let's get after it. We have so much to do and so much to be thankful for. And I think that attitude resonates with folks. I really do.
And you definitely got after it in pilot training, because out of pilot training you get, I think, one assignment, and then you're in the F-15. Yep. Not short soonly after that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a quick story about pilot training. Did you ever know Zip Martin, Bull?
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah. So he was a T-38. He was my instructor. I was super blessed, man. He was my personal instructor. Remember how we had a table with 2 students and 1 instructor around the classroom? So when I got to T-38s, and I was one of the last classes where everybody got T-38s. And, I think, like I told you, I was a slow to start, but probably accelerated quickly going through pilot training. Because we had a lot of folks that had pretty significant time when we showed up, but I think that was to some a blessing and to some a curse, because they had so many bad habits. I was an empty vessel, and so I had lots of room for growth and accepting the right things and the right instruction. But Zip Martin was my instructor, and he was one of those guys that everybody sought his instruction because, 1, he was very credible. He knew what he was talking about. And 2, he had a way to connect with people at an individual level. And I think that's something that I admired, and I always tried to emulate that. But, to your point, MJ, this was in the days when you got to pick your assignment, based on whatever was on the board. So I think I had the number 2 pick in our class for 9308. And this was in the days of banked fighters and banked heavies. So probably only about 50% of the people in my class actually got an airplane right out of pilot training. But I had the second pick. And as I'm walking up to make my pick, Zip yells out to me, "Hey, dummy, don't worry about it, man. Just go with your heart, because your best day behind a desk will never beat your worst day in a jet." So his idea was that, hey, man, flying is your passion, and it's all it's cracked up to be. So don't sweat it. It'll all be good. And I think that's true. No matter what you pick, and I see that with a lot of people that I talk to today when they're in pilot training, are they going to get a fighter? Are they going to get an AWACS? Or are they going to get a transport? It's like, hey, clear to have your goals, but in the end, flying is flying, and it's all going to be good.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And in pilot training, do you have, that was in Lubbock, Texas. Yeah. Now it's moved, but what was the atmosphere like? Like, I'm sure the classroom was rigorous, and, everyone wanting to do really well, but what about in the off time? Do you have any memories?
Yeah. I learned how to 2-step. Texas 2-step.
Got the boots.
Lubbock, Texas. It was, we worked, man. It was, no surprise. It was 6 days a week and maybe a little bit of time off on Sunday, Saturday night, and into Sunday, and then you're back to work to get ready for Monday. So a lot of dedication, a lot of camaraderie and teamwork. But man, when it came to Friday night at the Oak Club or Saturday night out on the town, 2-stepping at one of the Texas, one of the Lubbock bar rooms, just a lot of fun to be had for a group of 40 some of us that were in class 9308. So it was super cool. We had a guy in our class that was a Texas Tech grad, so he knew all of the local places to go to. And we went to Texas Tech football, baseball games, basketball games. We didn't have much time off, but the time we had off, we maximized. And it was just a great culture.
I love how, even though it's competitive, like there's only a certain amount of spots. Each person's, even you're competing against yourself, but you still are getting ranked, and that they're still able to have good relationships between people. Where it seems like in the civilian world, you see a lot of pettiness and infighting. Mm-hmm. Do you attribute that to anything?
Well, I find it interesting, when people ask me about, like, let's say a movie like Top Gun, like the one that just came out, Maverick, exceptional movie. And Tom Cruise is exceptional. But when you see it, the drama that's in there, that's Hollywood created. Because in the military environment, especially in a high-end, high-tempo thing like pilot training, or even more so in a fighter squadron, there is zero tolerance for that drama. that drama might last a day, and then guess what? It's going to be squashed in squadrons that have the right culture and the right leadership, because there's just no room for it. So you're absolutely right. You're competing against each other, but you never even really think about that. Your goal is to do the best you can and to bring every one of your teammates across the finish line. And you never question that or second guess it.
Awesome.
And I would attribute that. I would attribute that, MJ, to Air Force culture.
We need more of it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I suspect the Navy, even though Top Gun, for both movies, there's a lot of drama, self-generated drama that are in them. I suspect that's Hollywood. I don't imagine the Navy is exactly like the Air Force in that sense.
I don't know about the aviators, but definitely the submariners.
Mm-hmm.
Where our school is the same, where you see everyone's rank, their score, but everyone's just trying to get through and helping each other as they can. So it's a good culture as well. But do you remember graduating pilot school and getting those orders? Like, were you to a fighter right away?
Yeah, nope. So I was part of the bank process. So I chose a banked fighter, and there was a lot of risk in it then, where we had never seen the guys that were banked actually getting to a fighter, because I think this thing started around 1990. So it was an unknown. But again, I followed my heart, man. It's like, I didn't come here to fly anything but an F-15C is what I really wanted. And my path to an F-15C at the time was through a banked fighter. So I can't remember exactly how this happened, but somebody had reached out to me and said, hey, man, some of the guys that had taken banked fighters ended up going to Tyndall, which is where F-15 training is. And, it's in Florida, so who wouldn't want to go there? So just, again, one of those things through kind of a silent mentorship, I think. Somebody saw me and realized what I needed before I even realized it. And I got in contact with one of my dear buddies, lifelong friends. And Bull, I think you might have flown with him at Kadena, a guy named Andy Mann, Sporte.
Oh,
yeah. I went to talk to him, and he was a banked fighter pilot at Tyndall in the WEG, Weapons Evaluations Group. And he's like, yeah, dude, this is a great spot for an engineer. You can do some engineering work and work on that, develop those skill sets while you get a lot of backseat Eagle time. And it worked out like a champ. I ended up in Florida for 2 just phenomenal years as a young second lieutenant, working in the WEG. I was an exec for T.W. Smith and Scotty Scott, an Eagle and Viper guy, Kortuka 06s there in the WEG. For some reason, I was an engineer for like 6 months, and they saw pilot wings on my chest. And they're like, no, you need to come over here and do scheduling. So I did scheduling for like 6 months. And then they pulled me up to be an exec for the last year I was there, and I got like 60 hours in the backseat of the Eagle, and it was pretty phenomenal.
Awesome.
What's your approach when you're getting to observe in the backseat there to make sure you can learn the most you can while just riding along?
Yeah, well, man, it was a lot of it was learning the sight pictures for the Eagle. Right, for the formation, how to fly in the right tactical formation, and just listening. So it was a lot more riding as a passenger than it was riding as an active flyer. So really just taking mental notes. And I know for a fact that it all helped me out because, by the time I showed up to the FTU, the fighter training unit, or flying training unit, I already had 60 hours in the back seat. So I kind of had heard the lingo before, was familiar with at least the missions at the start.
My dad talks a lot about chair flying. Did you do that as well?
Still do to this day.
Wow. Can you describe that to the
dude? And it's no longer sitting in a chair, which is probably what we did. His chair flying and like mentally going over everything, maybe with like a mock cockpit around. But I still fly the Airbus for Hawaiian, and on my way to work, I'll go through the flows when I'm driving to work. Mentally, I'll have some music on in the background, but I'm thinking about checklists. I'm thinking about the flows. So that way, when you get into the seat, it's high and tight. I fly that, and I fly the T6 Texan here. So all those, man, I'm going through, and I'm on the way to the airport. I'm just mentally going through the preparation of what the flight's going to be like. And I've done that all my life. When I was an instructor at the weapons school, I remember driving from my house at Lake Las Vegas Inn. I would go through my BFN brief mentally in the 30 minutes that I would ride on the drive in. When I was at,
I think that's such a
when I was at Kadena, I remember some of the bros would see me like if I had to lead a mission, as like an MQT BFM or something like that, or a TI ride, I would be on the stationary bike early in the morning, and I would have my briefing guide out on the stationary bike, and I would be flipping through it, and the guys would see me as like, "Oh, you must be flying today. I'm not going to talk to you or bother you because you're getting ready for your brief." So chair flying, it has just the mental preparation is absolutely key to success, I believe, and I think you could apply that to many aspects of life beyond the flying.
Yep.
I 100% agree. And I mean, I didn't learn about it, or no one ever stressed that in school, in high school or anything like that. But my dad told me about it, and just whether it be preparing for drills or even a presentation, like what you want to do, like going through prepping for a podcast, making sure that, it's one day, one time I didn't press record once. And if you're chair flying, walking through that, you're less likely to make those errors.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from military aviation is that the chair flying, the mental preparation, the Army calls it a ROC drill, ROC, rehearsal of concept, which I used quite a bit when we were in Korea in more of a joint environment. But I think that applies to a lot of things in life. And I think that, along with the debrief, are two big things from the fighter. There are many things from the fighter pilot culture, but the mental aspect of preparation and excellence, and also the debrief, are things that we have that I don't see in other places, but I think we all benefit immensely from that.
Oh, I want to get into the debrief. What is the 4.0 debrief? Like, how would that go?
The 4.0 of debrief, I think there's nobody that teaches it better than the weapons school at Nellis Air Force Base. And the real idea is, how do you, giving what you know about your desired objectives, there's no such thing as a perfect mission. But I heard this saying, and I can't take credit for this, but I completely agree with it, that there's no such thing as perfection, but if you strive for perfection, you will reach excellence. And I think in the debrief is really how you get to that. So you know what your objectives are, you know what your performance measures are, and in the end, when you go back and review how you did, how do you instruct to get to that 100% of perfection? And now we have a goal for the next time we do this. And that next time, for fighter pilots, you never know if it's going to be in combat or if you're going to get another training opportunity. There's a saying on the wall: before you walk out of the vault, you tap every day. Train as though your next sortie is at war.
And so you're talking about objectives too. What goes into making sure they're quality objectives?
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes with wisdom. You've got to have the credibility and a PhD level understanding to be the person that is really defining those objectives. And it could go to anything in life, I think. But specifically, as we look at just our performance measures and objectives, we look at it two different ways in the Air Force and the fighter community. Step one, I would say, is a building block approach where we break things down, like let's say our basic fighter maneuvers or BFM, where we have very key performance objectives. I want to maneuver to kill the bandit. I want to maneuver to maintain offensive, and things of that nature. And those are very specific things that in debrief you can get to say, yes, we did or did not achieve those objectives. But then you go on to a later stage in life where it's not podcast training, but it's more mission oriented. And then that's for, like a defensive counter air. Did we defend the target area for a certain vulnerability period? And the answer to that's very easy to achieve with a yes or no. And if the answer is no, then how do we come to a point where we do this next time? And equally important, if the answer is yes, how do we ensure, was it luck or was it by our execution, And either way, how do we get ourselves to a point where we are better able to do this next time?
And there's got to be so many lessons and things to work on. Is there a good way to compile it all and spread it out to the whole squadron, or how does that work?
Yeah, that is a I think there's a key saying that I love. I learned this from a guy named Texco at Weapons School. The number one priority for a leader: build more leaders. Right? So it's one of those things where you are constantly building that next generation. In the jobs I was fortunate enough to have, especially when I was flying with your father at Kadena, he mentioned this when I was a captain to a young major, is you're the tactician for the squadron, and that's your goal. Is you get everybody. One, you make sure your squadron's ready to go to war, and two, within that squadron, you get everybody to their max performance level, and you're always pushing to get them to the next level. Like for a wingman, you want to get them to be a 2-ship flight lead. For a 2-ship flight lead, you want to get them to be a 4-ship flight lead. If they're a 4-ship flight lead, you want to get them to mission commander to instructor. And that cycle never ends.
Well, now moving back to the career path, you said you weren't eventually, you got banked, but then you're in Tyndall, and then you find out you're going to a squadron there in Tyndall to fly the F-15C. Do you remember your first time flying the jet?
Oh, I'll never will forget it. I got a quick story to tell you about that, just with perseverance. So I'm there at Tyndall, and it comes time for me to go back to requal, which was a great process. I got to go to Oklahoma for about 3 months, basically get some academics, get some sorties in the T-38 to get recurrent, and then you go off to IFF. And I was super blessed to go to San Antonio for IFF, which was just a hoot, absolute hoot. But, my drop comes out, my assignment comes out from AFPC from the fighter porch, and it says F-16.
Oh.
I'm like, this doesn't read Eagle. What's the problem here? So kind of like that time that I picked up the phone and called, I'm just this pogue guy that's graduating from high school. At this point now, I'm just this random lieutenant. I see the number on the assignment on my email from AFPC, the fighter porch, some major so-and-so. So I pick up the phone and call him. And I'm like, hey, man, I think there's a mistake on my paperwork. It doesn't say F-15C Eagle. And I don't know how I did this, MJ, but somehow or another, I convinced this cat, the fighter porch dude, to give me an Eagle.
That's awesome. What's that? Closed mouths don't get fed? Is that the saying?
Yeah, that's a great saying. But I think he just got tired of me. I won't say belly aching, but I was definitely a squeaky wheel in this case. It's like, hey, man, I'm already here. I've got 60 hours. It'd be silly to send me somewhere else. And just knowing all along, my heart was in the Eagle, so it all worked out like a champ.
And the F-16 is a sexy plane as well, but I'm glad you kept pushing for the Eagle.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, but it's no Eagle.
So you're there in Tyndall, and do you get any more rides with the squadron, or when do they send you out solo?
Basically, you go. I did 3 months at Oklahoma, at the UPT base there, and then back to Texas, to San Antonio. Had a great time there with IFF, Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals.
That's where I went also.
Yep. And then off to Tyndall, I went through the FTU and the first fighter squadron, Miss Fury. And dude, the first ride, it's kind of like the first ride. I never will forget my first ride in the T-38. When you plug it into Afterburner for the first time after being in the tweet, which is just basically turning dinosaurs into noise, the tweet. But then you hop in the T-38, which is just this super sleek, it looks like a rocket ship, and it really is. You hit the Afterburner for the first time on your battle ride, and it's like, wow. Just the wow factor in the Eagle. Your first flight in it, you take off and do a vertical climb up to like 20,000 feet. And it's just super impressive. And it was, the only words I have to describe it are love at first sight, MJ.
Jeez.
Yep.
Well, MJ, we've been going about 50 minutes, and Tonko had, I mean, we just barely got to pilot training done, so we could stay here for 4 hours. We're not, but you did all those other assignments, weapons school, Korea, Hawaii, all that stuff that you did, war college and stuff. But you said you wanted to talk about transitioning and stuff like that. So I don't want to take over, MJ, but I know it's 50 minutes and we're still pilot training.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do we got to do multiple of these. I think there's too much to cover.
MJ, when you put me and your father on here, man, we could just talk. We could rap for like 2 days and never even get tired.
Oh yeah, there's so much. And you're talking about the T6 Texan too, so I still want to go into that and talk about.
I think the life lessons would probably be in some of those assignments, that I did that Bull just mentioned. Again, and taking me up to the culmination. So maybe if you want to go through those, we can talk about them. And I don't want to make you guys late for getting on the road here, and you probably
no, not at all.
Yeah, but let's go. Maybe we could time it out. Maybe go for another 50 minutes or so. We'll do it. This be like we'll call this an X ride. Like we did our first ride, 50 minutes. All right, MJ, your time management skills. We might need to go back and look at that. So let's try this one more time for 50-minute half.
All right. No, yeah, I think I'm good with that. Yeah. You good with that, Dad?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So F-15 climbing 20,000 feet there, and then I'm guessing it's over the Gulf too.
Oh man,
right?
it was
there in Panama City.
It was like home. I really, and you guys are there right now. I really always loved that part of Florida between Panama City and really up at Eglin Air Force Base, Destin. Where you guys are at. Just a phenomenal area. Great people, great part of America. The flying is exceptional. It's been the home of air superiority and air dominance for generations, man. The number of people, to include your dad and I, that have been trained there by just some world-class folks. So yeah, it was like going home, and it was a great 6 months. It went by way too fast. But it was definitely learning to fly the Eagle there was a once in a lifetime experience.
What's it like being the new guy in the squadron? Do you have any advice for people in going to new roles?
Yeah. I'll say this, and you can be able to edit out some comments here if you need to, MJ. Yeah.
I like the unfiltered stuff. I like just let it loose.
Yeah. So I'll keep it rated G here. So advice to the new guy: think about what you're going to say it to yourself, and then shut the heck up is what I would say to any new guy. And that's a fighter pilot motto, man. Is like, if you're the new guy, nobody really cares what you have to say. Clearly if it's a safety issue, speak up and you're part of the team. But as far as having an open mic night for you, absolutely not, new guy. So shut up.
Did you guys have the popcorn in the squadron bar? Is that the new guy duties?
Yeah. The new guy duties, taking care of the squadron popcorn, taking care of the Jeremiah weed, taking care of the beer fridge. The bar needed to be clean at all times, squadron presentable to anybody. All the briefer rooms set up with everything they need. And I know, I saw your podcast with your father, and he was exceptional at that, even at an older, more mature age, coming in from being a fate first, but still accepting the role as, hey man, this is what every new fighter pilot does. And I know your dad was exceptional at that. And I did it myself, probably at a younger rank than where your dad was.
Yeah, one of the things, I'm pounding my own chest here, wherever, give myself a compliment, but Muttley Berman once said, because I was a senior captain going through, and he said, what I like about Bull is he's a lieutenant. He acts like a lieutenant.
Yep.
So that was nice to hear.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a picture of you with the vacuum cleaner on the squadron pool table, vacuum the pool table. It's crazy. Did you guys have jalapeno popcorn too? Because I always remember having jalapeno popcorn.
Is there any other kind of popcorn? Right?
I love it.
Yeah, it's the best, man.
More people need to try it. Just throw in some jalapenos in there when you're cooking.
Yeah, as a matter, the jalapeno popcorn, the Jeremiah weed. I actually had a shot of Jeremiah weed on Sunday night over here. I had some guests over to the house. A dear friend of mine, Ray Johns, retired Air Force general, and somehow or another the weed story came up, and next thing I know, we're all doing weed shots. But I'm like, oh my gosh, when I woke up this morning, that's not what I thought was going to happen.
I've never tried that. I gotta.
We'll get a bottle.
Yeah, we gotta do that, Dad.
Yeah.
So, were there any deployments there in that first squadron, or was it all training?
Yeah, first squadron at Tyndall was just all about training. Yeah, you get qualified in the Eagle. Yeah, and it was just a really good 6 months. Some great instructors coming out of it, and I was a fully qualified Eagle driver coming out of it, just like your dad was, and so many others, man.
We're number one grad out of your Tyndall class, right?
Yep. Super fortunate. Had a great class. Basket Cunningham, Doc Miller, not so cool. Clyde Callahan, you probably know most of those guys. Superb instructors, Bam Bam Stavros, Sap Malloy, and Nike Winslow, E.T. Murphy. Just names that are legends. And out of that, one of my classmates, Basket, is still serving. Dear, super close friend of mine, and he is now the Air Warfare Center commander at Nellis. So it's great to see Nellis is in such good hands.
Yep.
And excuse me. So in Tyndall, there, you're flying the F-15, and eventually that has to come to an end. Do you know where you're going next, or how does that work for the orders?
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. And this I think is a lesson for anybody, is that a lot of how I see success in life is dependent upon attitude. And that's when you can't control a lot of things, but your attitude is always something you can't control. And I'll start off with saying that there is, in the F-15, there's no such thing as a bad assignment, right? The Eagle Mafia did so good with where we were going to put key strategic locations for the F-15. But I had a class of 6, and everybody wanted to go to Eglin, right? Eglin is the hot spot. That's where I wanted to go. That's where every single person wanted to go. We had one Germany assignment to Spangdahlem Air Base. And, I'm the single guy. There are a couple guys that were married. I'm like, dude, if I don't get Eglin, my wife is going to kill me. And I firmly believe that. We won't mention who that was in my class, but it's like, I'll go to Spangdahlem. I'll hop on that grenade, throw me in that briar patch. So I went to Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany for my first assignment. It was the one assignment that nobody in the class wanted. There were a lot of rumors, and the rumors ended up being true, that the fighters in Germany were going to close. We had gone from Eagles at Bitburg to one Eagle Squadron at Spang, and then that eventually went away and got absorbed by Lakenheath. But that was a reality. But I'm like, hey man, I'll be happy to go there, and it worked out fantastically. It was a great assignment.
So going overseas, was that your first time in Europe?
Yeah, first time in Europe, first time overseas. Period. Dot. And that was young 20-something-year-old straight out of Tyndall FTU, showing up at Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany for my first assignment. And it was a 2-year assignment. To my arrival there at Spangdahlem, some great friends there that I met, Blade Wilkins, Banger Newton, Bangs Kinzik, all folks that I'm sure your father knows. But this was in the days before cell phones. Like, this was 1996. So I had talked to my sponsor, Banger Newton, one time on the phone, and I didn't know him, he didn't know me, but Banger's picking me up from the airport, right? And you show up overseas, so you got everything, all your world possessions, to include your flight gear, in 3 bags. That's what you're allowed. It's on the rotator going from Baltimore to Frankfurt, Germany. And you show up, I'm sitting out on the curb after an all-night flight and sitting there with my 3 bags. And I'm sitting in the airport with my 3 bags. And I'm like, everybody's gone. Everybody, all 300 people that are on the rotator are gone, and my dude's not here. So I really didn't have a backup plan. So I'm like, well, I'm thinking about contingency ops here if I don't get picked up and escorted back to Spang Air Base. I'm like, let me sit down and have a beer and think about this thing. But as I'm sitting there having a beer at the airport, this dude keeps walking by me. And I'm like, what the heck is up with this? And I'm like, if my first experience here at Spangdahlem is getting hit on by a dude, I'm going to be extremely pissed. And this dude keeps walking by me and he's looking down. I'm like, what is this guy doing?
Checking you out.
Guys, I'm like, is this guy checking me out? Or, I've never been to Europe before, but what's this all about? And I look down and he's looking at his pocket and he has a little bar napkin. And on there, he's written Gary Rose. And it's my friend, eventually, Banger Newton. So he's late to show up at the airport to pick me up. So his sponsorship is right away. He's got strike one. And then he's got this little beer napkin that he's written my name on. And he's walked by me like 10 times, causing me a little mini panic attack about, am I going to get attacked here in Germany? But it's Banger showing up to pick me up from the airport. So that was my welcome to Germany. And it gets better because we've got like a 2-hour ride back on the Autobahn to Spangdahlem Air Base. So we get my bags outside and Banger's like, hey man, wait here 5 minutes. I'll pick you up. 5 minutes later, I see this little 1980s red Corvette rolling around the corner. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm sitting there with all my bags. We got a 2-hour ride. You're picking me up from Spangdahlem and this is what you're picking me up in? Banger. So, that started a great relationship with the great American, Banger Nugent. We have, that's like one of 10 stories that we have where, so we ride back. I've got a bag underneath my feet, a bag sitting on my lap for 2 hours, and a bag in his spacious trunk. And we eventually made
And this story sounds crazy, but there's no cell phones, right?
There's nothing, man. We had nothing, no cell phones. Yeah. Really, email's not a thing yet. So we had talked on the squadron phone. Like he called me one day in the scheduling shop. But you're a young fighter pilot, man. That's what you do. You go make things happen.
So did you like those overseas trips more than being stationed in stateside? Because you've been to Okinawa, you've been to Germany. Do you have a preference?
Yeah. I won't say I have a preference, but I think the key takeaway from this thing, and I'm sure your dad will agree with me, is whether or not you like assignment's going to be up to you and your attitude, because every single place has got something good about it. And I'll tell you, for me, being first assignment to Spangdahlem was tremendous because our squadron, so fast forward, this is just typical life there. So we were still setting alert, right, against the Russian bear. Even though the wall had come down, we still set alert.
Yep.
So Banger and I, as the single dudes, we draw alert during Christmas, my first Christmas there. My squadron commander, Mike Finnegan, walks in. This is an example of exceptional leadership. He was an Irish guy, had these big Irish jaws. He's like, Tonka, I know it sucks. You're the new guy here and you got stuck on alert for Christmas. I'll tell you what, me and the DO, we're going to take alert. You and Banger go do something fun. So just call me and let me know where you are, because we're like the part of the men manning for the squadron. He's taking a lot of risk by doing this.
Yeah.
Just give me a phone number of wherever you're going to be at, so I can get a hold of you if I need you to come back. But you guys are cleared off. So
that's awesome.
Banger and I proceed to go on one of the most epic trips ever across Europe. So we drive we go to the Italian Alps. We're skiing on Christmas Day, have dinner in this little villa in Italy, ski for like 2 days. And he's like, hey, dude, I got an in with the flight nurses at Spangdahlem. They want us to go to Berlin for New Year's Eve. So we drive back to Spangtown in the middle of a blizzard to catch a train at the last possible second with 5 very good-looking flight nurses, for which we proceed to go to Berlin for a 3-day debacle and for a New Year's Eve party.
What a boss.
And that's called Tuesday on this first assignment, right? It's like how can any day get any better? But then it always, through this great people and the experience of being in the Air Force, and young fighter pilot in the Air Force, man, it's just every day is better than the last.
How do you balance the job responsibilities to? Oh, hey mom, she's hopping in.
What's going on? Aloha. When are you guys coming back?
Not soon enough.
Oh my gosh! I'm gonna tell you what today's like. It's a crystal clear, blue sky, Hawaii day, 80 degrees with light trade winds.
That was how it was the entire week we were there.
Mm-hmm.
We loved it and missed it already, and it was awesome that we got to see you on top of all that.
Yeah,
So,
that was
I
so
don't wanna
much fun.
crash the podcast, so I'll let you guys go. But it's good to see you again. All right, love you,
All
Tonka.
right.
All right, come back out and visit.
Okay.
Yeah. So there. What were we saying? Oh, the balancing work and like also, at least in the Navy, I saw this was not good. Where it was people had a hard time balancing their duties on the job while also staying healthy and like going and doing things outside of work. We had COVID, which we saw a lot of people just shacked up inside, and it really messed with their head. But going out and living and staying healthy, exercising. Do you have a mindset for that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I learned, I think I started to learn this in pilot training with never take yourself too seriously. That you've got to be willing to let go and unwind is super important. And there's another thing I learned later in life. So I'll tell you, this whole thing you asking a super important question, NJ. And I'll tell you, for me, I'm still a work in progress with this thing. So I'm 56 years old and I still haven't figured it out. But I think it's super important, the question that you bring up. How do you achieve that right balance? And I heard this at a young age and I thoroughly believe it. And I would include this in mentor sessions. It was passed down to me, and I include this. You will never be less busy or have fewer demands on your time than right now at this very second. And to hear that as a young lieutenant or a captain that's in TUFLUG and in the scheduling shop at the office in Spangdahlem Air Base in the 53rd Fighter Squadron, you're like, man, I'm pretty busy right now, but I do have time. I can leave during the day and go to the gym for a couple of hours. Turns out as you get older and more responsibility, you don't have that time, right? And for the people that have families and those competing demands, I think that's a very important thing. And how do you figure out how to achieve that balance? And what I will tell you is, this is through life's hard lessons, because I was a very poor example of it, right? Single guy, all I did was work. I loved what I did. But being a fighter pilot, like so many other jobs that are at that very high level, it can be very demanding like that. And now you throw the leadership responsibilities on top of it. But if you do not do those things, which are balancing those priorities in your life, nobody else will. You're the only person that's going to do that for yourself. Your boss is not going to do it. Your boss is just going to ask more. But I think part of being a good boss is, one, demonstrating that ability yourself, right? If the boss is at work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, guess what? Everybody else is going to be there. I learned that from one of my favorite bosses and best bosses I've had was Tex Coe at the weapons school. He would leave every day, unless he was on a mission, he would leave every day at 5 o'clock. Now, he didn't quit work at 5 o'clock, but he went home, had dinner with his wife and 2 children, and then got everything squared away, and then he would stay up at night and work from home. But in doing so, by leaving at 5 o'clock, but ensuring everything was still done, he was letting other people know that, hey man, get your job done. It's okay if you leave, because I want you to be able to have other things that are important in your life. And just personally, I think that's a great question and so important to answer that. The things that you must balance personally, your own physical health, your own professionalism, so being super squared away at your job and your credibility, your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual well-being, your social well-being. All those things require some thought and some skill at balancing them. And I think most important out of that is you got to carve away time to think. That if you don't have time to sit down and think about your own personal life and your own self, it's really going to be difficult to be that exceptional leader, that exceptional teammate, that exceptional wingman, that exceptional husband, wife, father, mother, daughter, son. It enables everything else. Humble to.
Are there certain activities that you like to do that help you just kind of detach and reflect?
Yeah. definitely for me as a youngster and growing up, my getaway was to work out, right? That was where I let off some steam, kind of clear your mind. So um, even when I was at Nellis at the weapons school, I've got a group that I still hang out with to this day from Lake Las Vegas. We called ourselves the 4 a.m. gym gang. It was
Nice.
a guy named Mike Pack, a guy named the Judge, who is actually Judge Mark Stevens. He's a Henderson judge. A girl named Karen and a girl named Peggy. Karen was a financial professional, and Peggy ran the gym. But we were always there. We were like early 40 somethings ish professionals that if you weren't there at 4 a.m, you didn't get to go to the gym, right? Because once you get involved in work, you're not going to have the opportunity to extract yourself. So we were there religiously at 4 a.m. in the morning, getting after it. And it really is you've got to figure out what those things are that you're going to do outside of work. I think that's going to be your relief valve. For some people, it could be reading. For some people, it could be going for a walk. For some people, it could be family time with the kids. But all those things are important. You got to figure out what works for you, in my humble 2 cents.
And I saw somewhere, did you train for a triathlon?
Yep. I've done a couple of triathlons. I've done a marathon.
Wow.
Yeah.
When was that? When was the first triathlon?
I did. So all my triathlons were just the shorter sprint ones, and they were all on mountain bikes. So that just gives you, it wasn't like I was setting the record or anything like that for time.
Still.
But I did, my first one was at Tyndall Air Force Base as a youngster, open ocean swim, and mountain biking, like some trails there in the sand, and a run on Tyndall Air Force Base. The last one I did was at Lake Las Vegas, circa probably 2010. I did the Dublin Marathon in 2006, which was pretty cool. Basically, a running through the city. Yeah.
How tough was that?
Yeah, it was tougher than I thought. Because a quick side story on that, it was tougher than I thought because I had trained and I was ready to go. But, every race I've done maybe 5 half marathons getting ready for this thing, all in between Dayton, Ohio and Europe. And then every one of those half marathons, every mile or two, they've got a water station. They've got a food station where they have apples, oranges, bananas, protein bars, all those things. So I see these hydration stations on the map for the Dublin Marathon. The hydration station was only water. They had nothing to eat. So I did this entire marathon on no food, which is next to impossible. Bull, have you ever, you run long distance, don't you?
Yes, okay. But I've never done an official marathon, just unofficial.
Yeah. MJ,
and you'd bring food.
Yeah. Dude, you got to eat. So that's what I hate to eat. All my running up to that point had been like, you're going to do 3 miles, 5 miles, even up to 10 miles. My old, my VMI roommate, Pete Dillon, I mentioned, was in the Marine Corps. He would drag me on these Saturday runs with him that were like 15 miles in the Virginia mountains. And it was like one thing I learned about anything for me personally over about 10 miles, you got to eat because your body's going to run out of energy. So when I passed the first food station, MJ, and I don't see any food, I'm like, I got no money. I got nothing, right? This is going to be an issue. And I even got so desperate at the point where I'm seeing people, clearly I was the only idiot that didn't know that this thing was going to be, hey, you got to bring your own food to this race.
Yeah.
I'm seeing these wrappers, like a wrapper on the ground. I'm like, I should just pick it up and see if anything's left in it. That's how desperate I was. So It ended up being, I finished the marathon in like 4 hours, which was,
that's awesome.
Well, my training had me in under 3 hours. Like my goal was 2 hours and 44 minutes. But didn't happen because I had to walk part of it because I was ready to pass out. So I was really, how I kept going, man, was just, I had to stop running and just say, dude, we're going to put one foot in front of the other and collect yourself, and then you can start running again. But I had to do that multiple times just because I was getting lightheaded because I had no energy.
Yeah, I think at that point your body starts eating itself and you just shut down. So the fact that you even finished that trying to run sub 3.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so talking about the like work-life balance stuff, is there any books that you've throughout your career that have been really impactful to you?
Yeah, I'll have 2 books fairly close by that I reference quite often. The first one is Start With Why, Simon Sinek.
Yep.
We developed a great relationship at the weapons school with Simon, and really getting to the weapons school's motto of build, teach, lead. And it just resonated to me with what is the why behind the things that you are doing. So I have really carried that book around with me and relied on it quite a bit. The other one that I really admire and I just enjoy reading is Fighter Pilot by Robin Olds. It's a fantastic book.
Is that about is that like World War II fighter pilots or?
Yeah, he's the crux of his the beginning of his stardom and fame is he starts off, he's a World War II ace, young guy. I think he went to West Point, decided he was going to fly, and got in the Air Force, was a P-38 pilot in Europe, and twin engine, twin tail, right? So it's got to be great. And twin engine, twin tail, single seat fighter flying in Europe is pretty good stuff. And he became an ace. Where he is really famous for is he is leader. He's Wolf One, leader of the Wolf Pack, and led this very famous squadron in the Vietnam era.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Yeah,
Fighter Pilot. I think it's called American Fighter Pilot by Robin Olds.
And then you're talking about Simon Sinek there in weapons school, and I don't know if, from my understanding of weapons school is it's the best of the best pilots in the Air Force go to weapons school, and then the role after that is to go to squadrons, and you're the weapons officer, and you're responsible for the training to make sure everyone's at that high level. When did you find out that you were selected to weapons school?
Yeah. So I found out I was selected for weapons school. My second assignment was to Eglin Air Force Base. So, how we kind of talked about Eglin was this crown jewel of the F-15 community because one, it always had great people, great leadership, great mission, and you're living on the beach in Destin, Florida. So life's pretty good. So I went to Spangdahlem for my first assignment. Turned out to be a phenomenal assignment, living in Europe for 2 years and then coming back to Eglin Air Force Base. So I eventually got there, and I went to weapons school from Nellis. To weapons school from Eglin. So I went from the 60th Fighter Squadron at Eglin Air Force Base, and I found out when I was on a combat deployment to Operation Southern Watch, and I still take some heat for this, but it's kind of joking heat for the most part, but I think some dudes still hold some animosity towards me. So, in a kind manner, if you will. But so my time there at Eglin was just an incredible time for me. I went through 5 upgrades in a year. And Bull will definitely appreciate what this was about. I showed up there from Spang as a 2-ship flight lead, and just through some exceptional leadership and mentorship, Opie Denny, Job Handy, Hawk Carlisle, and the weapons officers there, which were Yard Corcoran, Scratch Young. Those were the 2 from the 60th, and then Dog Cornish was in the 58th. And we just had some, Stretch was also there, Stretch and Cat. And you probably know all those names, Bull. Just some great leadership. I went through 5 upgrades in less than a year. So it was nonstop. 4-flug, MCUG, IPUG, CFI upgrade, and I was also the FCF pilot. FCF is basically where you fly a jet that's maybe questionable maintenance-wise or hasn't flown in a while. The only time I was Mach 2 was on one of those things. I got to go to about 2.1 on a FCF sortie, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
Jeez.
So all that, but then, it was just a great time of life. And I look back, I don't really have a favorite assignment because they were all exceptional. But my time at Eglin, that 2 years, was one of the favorite periods of my life. Just hair on fire with all the upgrades, the great people. And then I was the project officer from Eglin for this really unique thing called a combined deployment, air dominance deployment to Saudi Arabia for Operation Southern Watch, which meant we were going to take a mix of people and planes from Eglin and a mix from the 493rd Fighter Squadron, the Grim Reapers, at RAF Lakenheath in England, combine them together to make an air dominance squadron in Saudi Arabia doing Operation Southern Watch. So we called it the Grim Crows, right? The Grim Reapers and the Fighting Crows, Grim Crows. So I was the project officer for this thing from Eglin. So I put everything together from our side, went over Advon, was there early. And I kind of convinced people that were close to me in the squadron. I was like, hey, man, we're going on this deployment for 6 months. Why don't you go with us? It's going to be a great time. Combat. This is, I think, my third or fourth combat deployment. So I got all these people on board to go. The one guy in particular, Bean Wallace, was a good friend of mine. I think Bull knows him. Yeah. So he's like, yeah, dude, I'll go with you. I don't want to go, but I'll go. So there was like 6 of us from Eglin and I think 12 from Lakenheath. And I'm there for like a month. And I get the note saying, hey, man, you've been selected for weapons school. You need to get back to get ready ASAP. So I had to tell all the boys, I'm like, hey, fellas, it's been fun. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun. I'm out. See ya. And Bean Wallace to this day still gives me grief about that. Is like, dude, you talked me into going to Saudi Arabia with you for 6 months, and then you peace out after like a month, which is 100% true. 100% true.
Well, I mean, weapons school is well worth it for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any big weapons school memories? I mean, it's the toughest school, I would imagine, in the Air Force. But
yeah, it was, but I'll tell you, it was, to this day, I had nothing but fond memories, and I had so much fun there, which is going to sound odd because you're literally, it's almost like being back to VMI again. You're just getting your butt handed to you on a regular basis. And it's described, being there as a student is described as an emotional roller coaster, because literally you go from a high of, man, I just had the best sortie, life's good, I'm a great fighter pilot, to the next sortie where you're like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to graduate. I might be home on Monday, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely high pressure, but there's an old saying that iron sharpens iron, so steel sharpens steel. So I truly believe that they put the pressure on you there, and it's definitely a tough program. They will find, I don't care who you are, how good you are, they will find the chinks in your armor and explore them for your benefit.
That's awesome. And then so now you're going back to Kadena and being a weapons officer there. My dad was saying one of the stories he has from you there was somehow you were able to get chalkboards in the vault when maybe that wasn't the plan. So on that, like what's the balance there of being a good leader and following orders, but also kind of doing the right thing?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of being a fighter pilot, right? Is a little bit of audacity. How do you balance the audacity and the daring with discipline and followership and adherence to standards, which is very, very important in rules. We did that was like that was definitely a big thing for me. In Cadenas, I got to go back there to fly, and it was as a colonel, and it was impressive to walk back in and see the vault that we had left there, and the 44th was still exactly the same. And I think to this day, it was probably one of the best vaults in the Air Force because it was just set up with so many good things that would facilitate tactical learning. And one of those was chalkboards. We had the couple of massive chalkboards, that had the floor to ceiling for the main briefing room of multiple iterations of chalkboards, dry erase boards, maps, and all 9 yards. So it was a pretty cool facility, Bull. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, in addition to us flying together, that was what we spent most of our time because I was in advanced programs and you were telling me what you wanted, and I just had to make sure that it was valid and it was all valid. And I think it goes back to architecture and your aesthetics, and all your houses have been beautiful and stuff like that. So you have a good aesthetic eye and just good functional eye, and it showed in that vault.
Yep.
And did they say directly? Did your boss say directly, like, no, we're not going to pay for the chalkboards, and you just went ahead and did it, send it?
Yeah, it might be something like that. We won't disparage any bosses, but Bull and I knew what was right. We knew what was right for the bros, for the team. That and to this day, it was funny. I go back as an old guy, and I get to participate in weapons school spin-up rides for some of the young captains, and to see them using the things that we had put in the vault back in circa 2003, 2004 was it was a good feeling. And yeah, your dad was a huge part of that, because we would not have gotten. I think all the money was from advanced programs. Yeah.
And that helps build that culture that you're saying, and the camaraderie and doing things like that. And those decisions, like it wasn't a safety related thing at all. Like no one's going to get hurt. So you might have got a slap on the wrist, but
small price.
It was well worth it.
But I think that goes back to where the expertise is. Who are the people that are going to know what the squadron needs to develop tactically? It's probably not going to be the senior person, which we both became. It's probably going to be somebody that's more connected to things at the ground level, specifically, one of the flight commanders or one of the weapons officers.
Right.
Yep. And moving along, I know we're talking about leadership, and you had the opportunity to get a couple masters while in the Air Force, and one you wrote a thesis, Bold Leadership for America's 21st Century Leadership. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, and what your thesis was about and what you saw.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my Air War College paper, and I was super fortunate. Air War College was just a great program, great instructors, and ability to sit back and think. I think that's really what it was. It gave me, I'll just applaud this for a time. The Air Force, to anybody that's considering going into the Air Force, just think about the opportunities that I was given to go to school, not only for my bachelor's that the Air Force paid for the most part, but send me to school for 2 master's degrees. You're getting paid full time to do this. It's just an exceptional opportunity that I say you won't get anywhere else. I really, as I rack my brain and try to think of some other organization that would do that for one of its members, I just don't think it's out there. So the Air War College and my thesis on bold leadership, this really started back at the weapons school when I was there as an instructor. When one of the things we battle in the military is a culture, and it's probably in the civilian world too, is a culture of yes, saying yes, not wanting to disagree for whatever reason. Well, the bold leadership, the idea behind that, I got from, again, one of my favorite bosses at the time, Colonel, retired General Tex Coe, who was the commandant there at weapons school when I was squadron commander and his deputy commandant. He argued that he needed dissenting opinions from his leaders, from his squadron commanders, from his instructors. He needed to hear the truth. And it kind of goes back to what Bull was saying about, hey man, it's from inside the squadron that people are going to develop the requirements for what we need to train, not the other way from top down. So the idea at weapons school for the bold leadership was, at the weapons school at that time, Tex was one of the first people to realize our Air Force, from a combat capability perspective, was on a pretty dangerous decline for several reasons. One was, and we were noticing this, how we were noticing our position at weapons school was the students that were coming in were having more difficulty getting to a certain level because they were coming in at a lower level because of their current experiences. And there was a couple things that foretold a story that we needed to be aware of, and the Air Force needed to be aware of. Specifically, on the line, we were spending a lot of time deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq in non-high-end wars, right? Super important that we're there to provide protection and air cover, but it's not a high-end fight. The Air Force, to a large degree, trains to fight a high-end peer-on-peer competition. And we were losing some of that skill set. That's definitely what we do at weapons school, right? Is you train to do a high-end fight. We were seeing that people were, one, worn out because of the personnel and the ops tempo, right? We were seeing captains that would go to, say, Afghanistan for 6 months, they're back home for 6 months, and they're gone again. So their ability to want, or their desire to stay into the Air Force for a 20-year career on a decline, right? You can't blame them for it. And also their combat skills were less. So the idea that Tex came up with was we needed to, as some of the first to recognize this, we needed to push this truth up to Air Force senior leadership. And that is part of the bold leadership is you as a leader, you have to be willing to inspire a culture of truth telling so that as a leader, you understand facts and truth and you can make decisions based on that. And that's really behind the bold leadership. Having a leadership philosophy that allows dissension. So you're bold in the fact that you allow that within your ranks. Now, the corollary to that is once the boss says this is where we're going to go, if it's a legal and moral order, that's the way we're going to go. Part of that's being a good follower as well. But there needs to be that time where you can cultivate the right strategy based on truth. Then also the other part of bold leadership is you need to have the boldness, the guts, if you will, to tell that story up, even though some senior leaders might not want to hear it, and there might be repercussions for it. So
Yeah, definitely.
That's probably more than you want to hear about bold leadership. That's it.
No, and it makes me think of the balance too, where kind of like pick your fights type thing. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure if I was in a leadership position, or if I'm looking at my boss, there's probably a lot of things I would do differently. But is there a balance of, even if you don't exactly agree with 100%, to kind of suck it up and do it so that you have more say when something you think is really important?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things on that, MJ, is one is having that trust. You've got to work to establish that trust in the leadership chain, right? You've got to trust your subordinates. You've got to trust those above you. And there's a circle in there of, if there's not trust, you really don't have a platform to start from. Beyond that, I think to your point is when your question is, when do you fall on your sword, right? If you're the leader that falls on every single sword, you're not going to get much done, right? And a lot of that is the knowledge and really the wisdom to understand when and what are the most important topics that I need to act on. Yeah, and choosing. And then if you have that good relationship and, if every day, if I work for Bull and every day I come to work, I've got my job is squared away, everything's being done. There's that trust in that relationship where he gives an order, that order is executed. And then one day I show up and say, hey, boss, do you have a second to talk behind closed doors about this? He's probably going to be more inclined to listen to me than if I'm the squeaky wheel or I'm not performing on a daily basis. So that's super important.
And I think the way you just said that too is very professional, mm-hmm. and you're not like outraged or, just this is mm-hmm. what I'm thinking rationally, and having an adult conversation with someone is important.
Yeah, but we talked about that quite a bit. This is circa about 2010, and we had studied Billy Mitchell and his techniques and some of our forefathers from the Air Force, where Billy Mitchell was very vocal on the things that he did, and sometimes that's required. It's like all leadership things; it depends. Maybe that's what's required. But I think, and I saw this in interviews with Hap Arnold and Tui Spots, is that their opinion was you can get more done by staying within the system than you can by going outside of the system, right? And we've seen that in some examples recently, even in the military, where, maybe it's required that you can no longer serve in good faith and you need to get on the outside to make an argument for something you truly believe in. But there's also the argument that if you stay within the system, you might be able to better work to get to that outcome, whatever it may be. Um, it's an interesting concept though, and I think there's no one answer. It's a really it depends situation.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you listen to Jocko Willink's podcast, and he always talks about Colonel Hackworth, and he definitely had that bold leadership style where he would say if something was wrong, but it's definitely a balance. And gosh, so we're running up on time here too, but you had such a decorated career, weapons school graduate and going back to weapons school later, having leadership roles there. And then you find yourself, eventually you have to have your Fini-Flight. And I know you still stayed in the Air Force after you're done flying, but eventually you leave the Air Force. So what are your takeaways of moving on to something new, and how was that Fini-Flight?
Yeah. So Fini-Flights are an interesting thing, and I'll tell you, I've had many Fini-Flights, as I know your dad has as well. When you're younger and you have a Fini-Flight, it's like, well, that's just my finishing with this organization, and I'm going to go fly somewhere else soon. Like when you're Fini-Flight from Spangdahlem, and then 2 weeks later you're flying at Eglin. So it has a different meaning because you're just saying goodbye to your friends and colleagues at a certain location. But as you get older, the Fini-Flights start to take on a different mindset. For me, I was super fortunate. I got to fly right up to the day I retired. Super fortunate and blessed. Man, I couldn't have asked for more. Yeah. But what I will tell you is, as you get older, for me, that happened about the time I was a lieutenant colonel at Nellis at Weapons School. You treat every sortie as though it may be your last, because you never know. You really never know whether there's going to be, whatever may happen. It could be the last time you actually fly in the F-15. And I thought significantly about those, and I actually went back and looked at the dates just on those Fini-Flights for me. The date for the Fini-Flight at Nellis, for my first Fini-Flight there from weapons school, was in July of 2011. And I remember I was going to Air War College after that, and you just don't know. You're like, hey man, I'm a career player now. I'm going to be a colonel in the Air Force. And you make that conscious decision that you're signing up to do. You'll always do whatever Uncle Sam and the Air Force tells you to do. That's what we do at service, right? All three of us are very aware of that. But as a younger person, you have a little bit of control over that. I think once you get to be about lieutenant colonel, squadron commander, or colonel, you're really making a decision, probably a family decision, that this is what we're going to do, and the bag's packed and you're going to go wherever they tell you. So I didn't know if I was coming back to a fighter jet or not. Thank goodness I did. Came back again, and I'll quickly a story about that. I flew right up to the last possible moment. My Fini-Flight was on 13 July of 2011. Air War College started on about 17 July. So like 4 or 5 days later. I had to drive from Las Vegas to Montgomery, Alabama in that time. So I was really pushing the time limit, but I did it because I was, had a couple more sorties at weapons school in the Eagle, in the Mighty Mighty. And I just didn't want to pass up any opportunity to fly. And I actually had to leave that night. I just looked at a picture of that Fini-Flight and afterwards. And I remember I had all my bags were packed and in the car and ready to go because I cut it that close just so I could get one more sortie.
And how do you? So it's a celebratory flight. Like you realize all that you've accomplished and what you went through, persevered through to get to that point. But you're still getting after it every day. Yeah. And so you leave the Air Force and you're talking about finding your why. Mm-hmm. How did you reflect and figure out, okay, what's next? What am I going to do?
Yeah, I tell you, I've thought about that for a long time, and knowing any advice I would give, and I give to people when they think about, hey, their military careers, you're in service date and your retirement. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So the sooner you can come to grips with that, the better off you'll be. And I still struggle with this today. I have not found the purpose of life that I had in the Air Force, but I search for that every day. And my good friend Ray Johns that I told you about, we were doing the Jeremiah Weed shots on Sunday night. Very successful in his second career. He's actually part of the owner in the T6 program that I'm flying with. He's like, you should read the book, the second half. So I'm reading that book now. You'd ask about the books, I would just offer that out. I'm in the first chapter, and it's just a pretty exceptional book that talks about the very question that how do you go from maybe a career of excellence to building a legacy, right? What are you going to do next? And for a lot of people, I think that's what it is with the military, is how do you transition? And I think for me personally, I've always been a big fan of the saying for everything there is a season, right? And I believe that is true for any of us that have been fighter pilots in the past. We will always be fighter pilots in our hearts, but there's going to be a day where that is a young person's sport. I was super blessed to be able to do that up into my 50s, to do it competitively up into my 50s. And quick story about Fini-Flights, to your point, that's exactly what happened. I had my Fini-Flight and I didn't even know it. So for me personally, I was supposed to retire in May 15th of 2020, but we all know that was knee deep into COVID. So I had everything was already planned out. I was going to retire with two of my dear friends, Freak Morosco and Monster Lowmiller. We were going to do our Fini-Flight together in a Century Aloha here at Hickam Air Force Base. And we were going to retire 3-ship up initial in a ceremony together, led by Scorch Harrigan and Scorch Hecker and Cobra Harrigan. And then COVID hit. So I didn't know it at the time, but my Fini-Flight was actually in the F-15C with the 67th Fighter Squadron fighting Cox at a Cope North in 24 February 2020. Didn't know it was my last sortie, and quite honestly, I'm not unhappy that it turned out that way. It just saved me a lot of heartbreak. Yeah, so for everything there is a season is what I would say to that. And I think that's true with being a fighter pilot. There's an opportune time to do things, a right time for everything on earth, a right time to hold, and a right time to let go.
That's a great place to have a Fini-Fight, though. Great platform, and they're in Okinawa, Japan. So, well, that's I mean, it's a little late, but congratulations on a great career, and
thanks.
That's awesome.
Thanks, brother.
So how is life after the Air Force? What do you have to talk on that so far?
Yeah, well, I think looking for ways to continue to pursue your passions. I've always been a firm believer in, if you find a way to make your passion your profession, you will never work a day in your life. And I think that's true. Bull and I put in, as I know you did as well, put in some long hours in the things that we have done. I never felt like I was working. It was always a pleasure to be there, to be doing whatever I was doing, especially when it came to the people and when it came to the organizations, and also with flying the Mighty Mighty Eagle. So where do you go from there? What I've found is I have a lot more time on my hands. So I'm still flying with Hawaiian, which I absolutely love. Also, I'm super fortunate to be getting checked out in the T6 to be a part of Oahu Warbirds. So
That's cool.
Yeah, I still find a lot of my passion goes with flying, helping others. I'm mentoring several young Americans now to find their way into the Air Force to do the exact same thing that Bull and I did, which is to fly planes in the United States Air Force. So I always appreciate that, and I know Bull will say the same thing, that you appreciate that as an older person. It's nice when somebody calls you asking for advice or contacts you, and it's like, hey, I'm thinking about this, and you might be able to help them, much like Warren Crowfoot helped me, always giving back to the next generation, and our saying, the first responsibility of a leader is to build more leaders. So I really cherish those opportunities and that the ability to do that.
It's definitely an admirable thing to do, and there in Hawaii, it's a beautiful place to leave the Air Force. I think I was just visiting out there, and we got to meet with you, and just had a wonderful time. And how do you balance all that white space on the calendar? Like, what's your priorities?
Yep. Well, so I've got my own business. I'm running that where I consult with Indo-PACOM specifically, and Bull will appreciate this. My business is called 9G, uh, which is the perfect break term. And I provide I get to use some of the experience that I've been fortunate enough to gain over the years to help some of our allies and partners develop their capabilities, specifically working with Taiwan right now through Indo-PACOM to help develop their ability to achieve their mission. I find a lot of satisfaction in doing those things. I'm also become an avid golfer. And I have a funny story about your dad. Your dad and I were talking about golf at one time, and knowing your father, this fits him to a T. When we talked about golf, he's like, "Hey man, when I play golf, it is what it is. Like if I hit the ball and it's laying on a tree trunk, you don't move that ball." And he's looking at me like, your dad's a big guy, and he's staring at me like, "You're not going to move the ball, are you? You hit it where it lies. You play it where it lies." And I'm like, "Bull, for me, I'm going to move it off the tree stump over here to some place where I have a better lie." But your dad, the score is the score, and there's 100% accountability on that score. So I think of him often when I'm playing, where I've got, it's not competitive golf. I'm just out practicing. So I might move this thing to a better lie, so I can practice on some skill set besides hitting it out of a tree root.
He's shaming you over here.
Yeah.
Now for the rest of your life, you gotta have
scarred me
on your
emotionally.
shoulder.
Yeah. So I do find myself pursuing that. I'll play golf. I did have a plan at one point before COVID to try to get my golf coaching license. That's still out there now that we're out of COVID. So, I don't know where that'll end up at, but I think.
Well, that's where we'll see each other next in October in Alabama or somewhere.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see.
Yeah. So I've got a gathering of old Eagles. I've been fortunate. I've been invited to an RTJ Prattville trip with a bunch of old Eagle drivers. So I'm going to try to drive by and see your pops on that trip.
I played that course a lot when I was at ACSC. I was at an ACSC during 911, and RTJ gave military people free golf the whole time.
Wow.
I mean, so I got to play that course all the time. It was really nice.
And that shows the camaraderie, like you were talking about. You may have left the Air Force, but you always have those people you served with, and I'm sure when you go there, everyone you haven't seen in years, it's going to be like nothing's changed. Like you saw him yesterday.
Yeah. Yep. So that's where I'm at now. Still pursuing the passion of aviation, trying to help others where I can, individually and on a more strategic level here in the Indo-Pacific, which I believe is very important for our future for America, and just looking for opportunities to give back. Still on the journey.
And I know there's so much more we could talk about, especially within your career, lessons learned. But there was, I think we've talked a lot about that, the perseverance, the drive, the getting after it, also having the work-life balance and enjoying yourself, enjoying your career. Thank you so much, Tonka, for taking your time and sharing your story. Hopefully it, maybe a person that is aspiring to be a fighter pilot listens and have some good insight. And I think everyone can take some of these lessons with the debriefs, stuff like that, bring it into your own career field and make yourself a little better. But you got any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
Hey, I'll just tell you, it's you two are great Americans. It was a pleasure to be on here with you. Bull, MJ, thanks for the time. And really, I agree with you. I hope if somebody can hear my humble words and somebody finds some perhaps inspiration or maybe some ideas on how they can pursue their dreams, I'll be eternally grateful for that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Dad, final thoughts?
No, that's it. I'm a big fan of Tonka.
All right. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.